leading the discussion. This will be the only time I've ever seen my penmanship. I don't actually write anything. But I'll be leading the discussion. And Judge Elrod, who's in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, very, very, very smart judge, she and I will be having a discussion on the Constitution. And we'll be going back and forth and discussing it. This is going to be sponsored by, was it Phi Delta Phi and also the Federal Society on campus. It'll be in Garrett Towns on the first floor, right when you first walk in by the front door. There'll be food. You should come. You'll learn a lot, and hopefully you'll learn something more about our Constitution. Okay? All right. Questions. What's on your mind? Any questions on body parts or organ donations or anything crazy like that? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if I have this right, but I think that some people sell their hair. I mean, I know you can donate it. But then there's people that sell it.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if that falls on the line of like not so close to me.
So the reason why there's no problem selling hair is that you grow hair back, right? You can donate blood because you generate new blood. You can donate plasma because you can generate new plasma. Generally speaking, people regrow hair. A kidney is considered something different. Now, you might ask, what about the cells in Mr. Moore? He generates those indefinitely. And that's probably right. In fact, there's currently a prohibition on selling bone marrow. Everyone know what bone marrow is? It's effectively stuff inside your bones, right? But people can get a type of cancer called bone marrow cancer. And one of the only ways to treat it effectively is to actually get a transplant from other people. You generate bone marrow every day of your life, right? And there's really nothing wrong with donating it. You'll recreate it in a few minutes. There's actually a law called the National Organ Transplant Act that lists bone marrow as something which you cannot sell. As a result, there's a massive shortage of bone marrow. So if any of you have registered to donate, you know there's long, long waiting lists. And there was actually a lawsuit filed a couple of years ago trying to challenge that, saying that they should allow sale of organ donations. And the government kind of conceded error on that, but it's going through. But there are a lot of things like hair and bone marrow which you do create new ones, which it's really hard to say you should not be able to sell it. Yes, sir.
What about the liver? Doesn't that regrow like every 12 months? I mean, I looked it up last time you.
Maybe you know smarter than I, but I don't think you can grow a liver from scratch.
They're not from scratch. They can take like pieces.
You're talking about parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, like you're not like a salamander. You grow a new organ, right? I think that if that's the actual case and you do grow the new parts of it, then that would fall along the lines of bone marrow, which is a cell that you regenerate. Much of our organ donation policy is driven by, as we discussed last week, a sense of morality that we shouldn't be selling our body parts. But there has been a strong movement in the last 20-something years to say, listen, there are people on waiting lists who are dying, waiting for these parts, and if there's a willing donor who perhaps would react better to cash than goodwill, then maybe we should allow it. Lou?
It has something to do with the level of invasiveness, like cutting your hair and drawing blood. That's
easy.
Not super invasive.
Right.
But having like a surgery to remove a part of your liver.
Okay, and that's absolutely true. So taking blood and semen and you know, hair and things like that, fairly non-invasive, right? But taking liver cells, taking bone marrow is invasive. Ovaries as well, yes, but those you can sell. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, you have to get them and they take them out. It's an entire procedure. So I think the invasiveness is one part of it, right? But I think there's other issues of whether we understand how easy it is for you to regenerate it. But I think you all raise good points. Yes?
What about selling your virginity?
Oh, man. Did I mention... No, okay, fine. Did I mention prostitution when we did that class? I can't remember if I mentioned prostitution. I think I did. Now I'll come back to it. Yeah, so you've probably seen this in the news. Every year or so, there's some women, usually it's women, I haven't seen any men, but maybe men do it as well, I don't know, who are willing to sell their virginity. Now, under the law of just about every state in this country, with the exception of a few counties in Nevada, prostitution is illegal. It's the ultimate ban on organ donations because you can't donate your body. at least temporarily, as it may be. That'll hit you in a second. So, assuming prostitution's legal, which it's not, then you can put a premium on a certain type of sex, which would be with a virgin. I don't have much more to say about that. But if you do have strong feelings on the legalization of prostitution, one way or the other, the organ donation argument is actually fairly close, because the arguments in favor of banning prostitution are actually quite similar to the arguments in favor of banning organ sales. If you have, for example, in Germany and other countries in Europe, you actually have regulated prostitution issues. There actually are, I think in the Netherlands, actually have unionized prostitution workers. Yeah, I mean, so you have many countries that have actually legalized this, and they have safety checks, and they have health benefits, and they have screening and testing and all these sorts of things. As we say, it's the oldest profession. People have been selling this service for longer than we know, and I don't know how long it will go. Melissa Strada, right? What if the prostitutes go on strike? I think that'd be interesting. There'd be black market prostitutes. I don't know, or called boyfriends or girlfriends. I don't know. All right, was your hand up, or did I start hand? No, it's okay. Did we raise your hand? Okay.
No, it was just like.
Okay.
I can just imagine, like, see.
Yeah, don't cross that picket line. That would not be a picket line you want to cross. All right, other questions? Other questions? Interesting. Okay. All right, so good. So there's a question. Do you lose title on death? Okay, we actually answer this in the case. Right? When the cells are removed from Mr. Moore's body, did he have any claim to them? No. Right? So I think the argument goes, once you're dead, you as an individual, you no longer have a claim over these cells, and then you can have someone else take them. You can't sell it, you don't have that stick in the bundle, but you can transfer it after death. The same way in your will, you can leave your son your home, or you can leave your car to your daughter. You can leave your organs to a doctor. So you can't sell them. You only have the ability to leave them as an anatomical gift, and you sometimes see that on various forms whenever you fill a driver's license, whatever. I will give a slight caveat. So note on your driver's license, the box says, do you want to consent to be an organ donor? I'll give you a slight hesitation, which I probably shouldn't, but I will do anyway. Doctors are in a business of trying to find, on short notice, organs, because they don't last very long. And there have been a non-insignificant number of cases where doctors were perhaps a little bit too quick to jump the gun and pronounce someone dead. So if you're interested in being an organ donor, you can perhaps put something in your emergency directive saying you want 2 independent neurosurgeons to verify that you're dead. Not 1, 2. Which shouldn't add substantially to the time it takes, but it just might, prevent something happening where a doctor verifies that you're brain dead and maybe you're not. There was an episode of Law & Order about this years ago. Some of you have seen it, where a doctor was trying to get some promotion, and he needed to get this donor for some affluent person, and he jumped the gun, and he said, oh yeah, this person's brain dead, when they hadn't fully gone through all the protocols. Okay. I don't know how frequently it happens, but in my mind, once is enough. Because when that happens and you're brain dead, you can't say anything. So just put that in the back of your head and forget I said it, but it's there. Okay, so any other questions? Perfect. All right, so we started in this class from the very first day about first in time. The first people to find a country, the first person to grab a fox, the first person to hunt a whale, right? The first person to report a news story from the war, the first person to dress up like Vanna White, the first person to extract cells and make a cell line out of it, right? Today, our topic is not the first person who finds it, but the second person who finds something. And I want to, at the outset, clarify one point. If I have something and you take it from me That's called theft. I want to make something very clear. If I own something, right? I have this cup, right? And then Nick says, "Hey, look, I just found this cup," and he grabs it, right? That's called theft. He stole it from me. Okay? I didn't lose it. I didn't abandon it. It's right here in front of me. I'm talking, and when I'm not looking, dude swipes it. Okay? That's called theft. That's always going to be theft. But what we're talking about here, right, is Nick steals my cup, right? And then Carson finds says, "Hey, that's a nice cup. I want it too." And then he takes it from Nick. Okay? Almost everything we're discussing today is between Nick and Carson. I'm not in the picture. Everyone get that? When we're dealing with property, we're not talking about who owns it in the world. I, as the original owner, have the original claim to it. All we're talking about today for most of the class is as between Nick and Carson. Between the two of them, who has the better or who has the superior claim to the cup? If I show up and I say, "Hey, that's my cup," I get it back. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. This is only between the two of them if they go to court and say who has the better title. Okay? You can even think of this in terms of a bundle of sticks, right? Right? I'm the original owner, so I have all the sticks in the bundle, right? Okay? And then Nick takes it, so maybe he gets 2 of the sticks, right? And then Carson takes it, he only has 1 of the sticks left. We each have varying strengths of the claim to the item that was stolen or lost. The mere fact that Nick was a jerk and stole my cup at the outset, that doesn't really matter between the two of them. If I come back to the picture, I can reclaim it, but between the two of them, his original theft, his original sin is secondary. Okay. Everyone see that? Everyone get that? Okay, cool. All right, so let's start with the first case. And I want to disabuse you. Has everyone seen the movie Mary Poppins or know of it? So in the movie Mary Poppins, one of the characters is the chimney sweep, played by Dick Van Dyke. And he looks really happy, right? They're dancing on the rooftops of jolly old London, and they look so happy with a smut in their face. This was an absolutely terrible job. I can't even stress how bad of a job this is. You can watch the video later. So this is actually more like, I've actually found that this photo was not contemporaneous, but it's a good representation of what a chimney sweep looked like. They generally had young boys as young as 4. Okay? Why do they choose young boys as young as 4? Because they're small. Dick Van Dyke, I love you, but you're too tall. You're not going to fit in a chimney. And let me show you a picture to explain why. Okay, this is a magazine that explains it. Back before any kind of centralized heating, every room would have to have a fireplace of some sort to, create warmth. And what you would have is in one chimney, which seems pretty big, where Santa comes down, right? You would actually have several flues, several different pipes within it. So this is in one chimney. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 6 different flues, and they're all coming from different places, right? Some of them start very low, like you have these big fireplaces. Some of them start like on the 2nd floor. Some of them curve. Okay. As you all know, and if you've ever done barbecue, when you make a fire, it creates ash, and it creates soot, and it creates stuff that blocks it. And if you ever have a blocked fireplace, that's a serious health risk because you have, what that was back then. You have carbon monoxide, you have poisoning, so you need to keep the path clean. Okay, so how'd they clean it? Now you may think, oh, why can't someone crawl down from the top, and like take a, a long pipe, or from the bottom? Well, the reason why is they were often curved. They were often at angles. So the way they had to take care of the cleaning was like this. They would put a little boy, 4 or 5, usually 4, 5, 6 years old, into the fireplace. They'd give him a brush like this, and they put, the reason why they wore these funny hats wasn't to look good, right? It was to prevent all the ash from falling on their face, but didn't do a very good job. So the little boys would, you can see it on this diagram. Over here, they would shimmy up the flue. And they would have a brush or the hat with the things coming out, and they would try to break apart. And hopefully they make it all the way to the tippy top and they crawl out. And you see there's a guy up there, you know, he's waving his hand up there on the top. Okay, that often didn't happen successfully. And if you can use your imagination, any of you ever crawled, if you get your knees too close to your body, you get stuck. Like this one right here. And once your knees are too close to your body, you're stuck. The only way out was, well, someone might crawl underneath you and try and pull you down by your bare feet, because you weren't wearing shoes, and yank you down. Or they try and maybe pull you from above. But once your knees are stuck, you're too wide. And they would usually suffocate and die. The other option is to break apart the chimney, which probably wasn't going to happen. So, yeah, a lot of people die this way. So this might give you a little bit more compassion for poor Mr. Armory, who found this jewel in the somewhere, right? So these were actually legal till like 1875, but they were banned. Eventually, thank God for technology, Luddites be damned, they invented machines that could do this, which are now used everywhere. But this was a pretty bad occupation. So you have that knowledge. Maybe you feel a little bit more bad for poor Mr. Armory. This was actually the Delamiries, the defendant in the case, was a very prominent jeweler, and he made some very expensive pieces of jewelry. And it seems he was in the business of ripping off poor little sweet boys. But that might have been part of his. There's some pictures of some of his silverware. Okay, is that it? Yeah, really ostentatious stuff. See anything else? Okay, that's it for now. All right, so let's do this case, which is frankly the shortest case we'll do all year. So this one's piece of cake. Where did I finish last time? Roughly. Oh, up there. Yes, thank you. I appreciate the honesty. I do like it. Okay, so Cassandra. Oh, sorry. Did you the okay? Oh, Cassandra. So what happened in this case? Really short facts.
Basically, the little boy, when he was sitting in the chimney, he found the jewel, carried it.
Okay, let's just stop for a second. He found it. What do you think happened? Okay, he probably stole it, but this is relevant, right? Because if you're a young boy, right, he's probably bringing you to the jeweler to get some cash. I bet the jeweler threatened to call the cops on him. He's like, take whatever I give you, or else I'm going to call the cops on you for stealing it. So that's not in the facts, but I'm assuming that informed the decision of the jeweler to rip the kid off. He's like, listen, kid, I'm going to call the cops on you. Obviously, you stole this, but We'll be like Cassandra. We'll assume that it fell into the fireplace and it was sitting there gracefully on the ledge. So, all right, Cassandra, go ahead. What happened next after he found the jewel?
He said he was a goldsmith to see how much it was worth.
Uh-huh.
And they basically gave him back. I think it was a ring that he found. They gave him back like the metal part.
Yeah.
Of the jewel, and was like, the jewel is ours.
Okay. Yes. Exactly. So Mr. Armory found some jewelry. It was like with a metal brace, some sort with a stone in the middle. Not too important. He brings it to the store. Guy says, "I'll give you three halfpence," which is like a few pennies. I mean, they were ripping the kid off. And again, I suspect they knew he had stolen it, and they were. If you ever try and pawn goods and the pawn shop thinks you stole it, they're probably going to give you a very low rate. Because in the event that it is stolen and the owner comes knocking, they're going to have to give it back, right? So they didn't want to take on too much liability. In the event that the owner showed up, they would have to give it back to the owners. They were probably playing it low key as a pawn shop. Okay. So the kid says, "No, I won't take 3 halfpence. Give me more." So the jeweler says, "Okay." He takes out the stone and gives him back the socket, which is effectively the metal brace for the piece of jewelry. It's like, okay, too bad. So what probably happened here, and again we don't know, is the boy probably stole it from some home he was cleaning, okay, and then the jeweler stole it from the boy. Everyone's bad, right? In this case, everyone has dirty hands. I guess quite literally in the case of the sweet boy, right? But everyone comes with unclean hands. Okay. All right. So some other facts with this case that are not there but are seem to be obvious is, generally speaking, young boys who are chimney sweeps don't have the time or the money to appeal a case to King's Bench. That was effectively like the Supreme Court back then. That was the highest court in Parliament. So if I had to guess, this, and again, I've read some about it, but we don't know for sure, this case became kind of like a popular cause, that everyone felt bad for this little boy getting screwed over by these jewelers. So I'm guessing some lawyer donated his time pro bono, because he can't litigate a case pro se to the highest court in England. It just wasn't going to happen. Also absent, of course, is the owner of the jewel. Right? Where is the owner of the jewel? If you're a wealthy socialite in London and you randomly have a huge jewel go missing and you have this entire big court case about it, you're probably mad about it. So if I had to guess, they said, you know what? Let the kid have it, right? Don't interfere. Because if at any juncture the original owner came back into the picture, superior title, they would have claimed it in a heartbeat. Okay? But that didn't happen. So again, so the case is appealed to the court of the King's Bench. So is that Jacqueline? Yeah. Jacqueline, what's trover? What's this word?
It is I think it's the wrongful taking of somebody's property and action to recover the value of that property.
Yes, exactly. When someone takes your property, what you might call conversion, which I'm sure you did in torts, right? The action to recover the value of the property is called trover. Okay. The other cause of action, which you probably did in contract something, is something called replevin. Allison, do you remember what replevin is? Anyone replevin?
Yes, the return of the property, right?
Yes. Okay. So yes, trover is the return of the property value. Replevin is the actual return of the property itself. You can do a case in contracts where it said replevin for a cow. Do you remember the case? Anyway, it's burned in my mind. There was one case where they tried to sue to have a cow return, and the first sentence case was replevin for a cow, which when you're a 1L seems very funny. Okay. So trover is you're trying to get the dollar value back. Replevin was property. So back to Allison. Allison, did the kid want the jewel back?
Yes. Well, he really wanted the money.
He wanted the money. He didn't care about the jewel. He wanted the, show me the money, right? He wanted the money, probably because he stole it and he wanted to get off scot-free. Okay. All right. So it's you, Eric. So the court then, he skipped over because he had an answer. So the court in this case has a very short analysis, right? Walk us through, and they're numbered. This is like the easiest outline of the year. Walk us through the court's analysis for this one.
Well, first to say that the founder of the jewel doesn't acquire an absolute right of property or ownership over it.
In your own words, don't read.
He basically said he found it, but he's not the superior owner of it. Whatever.
Okay, good. So there's probably some wealthy socialite in London who's missing the jewel, right? And if that wealthy socialite came back into the picture, it will be hers. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? But who are the two parties in this case?
It's not the chimney boy. It's the chimney boy's master employer.
No. Who are the parties in this case? It's called Armory versus. Who are the two parties?
Well, you have the goldsmith and then the actual.
Who's Armory? The boy, right. So the two parties in this case, right, that's all the court's litigating. The two parties in this case are Armory, who's a chimney sweep, and Delamirie, who's the jeweler. All we're concerned about, all we're thinking about, what is the relationship between these two people, right? And that's Christian, right? Yeah. So Christian, as between the two of them, right, the chimney sweep and the jeweler, who has the better claim to it? Exactly. The chimney sweep has the better claim. Christian, why does the chimney sweep have the better claim?
He had the jewel itself.
When did he have it?
When he found it.
Who had it in order of sequence? Who had it first? Yes. Okay. So remember we talked about first in time, right? As between the two of them, right, Elise? As between the jeweler and the chimney sweep, who was first in time? Exactly. The chimney sweep was first in time, as between the jeweler and the chimney sweep. Chimney sweep had it first. So the same way, this is Pearson v. Post, right? You were first in time, you have it. The mere fact that it belonged to someone else before doesn't matter in this case, because in this case it's only chimney sweep versus jeweler. The original owner of the property is nowhere to be found. Right? Everyone see that? All right, so Eddie, what do they do as far as the damages? Because the problem here is that the jeweler took the stone and never gave it back. How are we supposed to calculate damages for a jewel that we don't even have?
I don't know, specifically establish the value of the jewel.
Right. So how did they go about this? Because the jeweler probably sold it or used it somewhere. It's probably long gone. And what they do, it was actually kind of smart ass, but it works. No, Jason, what they do?
They stated something about the value of on the water or something. Or
Okay. Well, what do you think they were trying to get at there?
What this?
Let's say everyone knows carats, right? Carats, unit of measurement. Let's say we know the stone is roughly, say, 5 carats. We know the size of the socket, right? We know roughly. So what are they saying? Say we know it's about roughly 5 carats.
Say that it was of the highest value it could be.
Okay. So we're going to assume, the court say, of the jewel of the finest water. So to use parlance, say bling, right? We want to be the most, clear stone with the fewest imperfections, right? So if a 5-carat stone, say 5-carat diamond, could be, say, $20,000, and that's the highest cost of the jewel that size, we're going to assume that's the most expensive one. Because you know what? You're being a jerk, and you're not showing us the jewel, so we're going to make an adverse inference against you and assume it's the most expensive, like Kobe Bryant bling, really expensive stuff, right? It's like post-indictment stuff, okay? This is it's a really expensive stone, right? Okay. Or they have another option. Or Sonia, what's the other option? What can they do to what can the jeweler do to get around that high judgment? Yeah, bring the jewel to court so we can appraise it, right? So it basically puts him between a rock and a hard place. You can either bring the actual jewel to court, assuming he hasn't sold it, or if he's a jerk and already sold it, he's on the hook for the highest conceivable value, which is probably more than he got paid for it. So this is, it's a short opinion, but it's a really good analysis, and they really stick it to the jeweler there. Okay. Everyone get that? Everyone see this case? Okay. If only it stayed this easy, right? So this is a really simple case because its holding can be summarized in one sentence, which comes in a note after the case. It says, the title of the finder is good as against the whole world but the true owner. The title of the finder is good as against the whole world but the true owner. Which basically means if you find it, it's yours unless the true owner comes back into the picture. Okay? Unfortunately, the law has gotten more muddled than that, but that's a basic principle which you can keep in mind. Okay? So let's do a couple examples. Okay? I'll do it up here. So let's say I'm just going to number them, right? F1, finder 1, right? He finds a watch. Okay? He loses it. Okay? And then F2 finds it. Okay? F1 sues F2. Okay, this is a setup. Is that Elizabeth, right? All right, Elizabeth. So F1 finds a watch. You're walking around. Oh, there's a watch. Okay, then put it in my hand. It's an Apple Watch. It falls off. Crazy. and then F2 finds it, right? By the way, that's going to be interesting for educational uses, right? Because it makes cheating really easy. I hope people appreciate this. The Apple Watch makes cheating really easy, and I was actually reading something about this yesterday. Everyone knows this. Apple has a new watch. It goes in your hand, and you get text messages and emails, and it looks like a watch. It has a leather band. It has a normal face. You can't really tell what it is. So the same way that sometimes the people who are proctoring exams might screen you for having your laptop, your tablet, they're going to start screening iWatches. So that makes it very easy to get, and you don't have to take it out of your pocket. It's like, oh, look, I'm writing. And you're looking at your watch. Cheating's nothing new. It's just different ways of getting around it, right? So I'm sure everyone right now has just pre-ordered an iWatch. Right? Okay, so I'm sorry, Sonia. I didn't mean. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. I didn't mean to distract you. Okay, so the question was, you find an iWatch on the floor, then you lose it, then someone else comes by and finds it, right? You're the original finder. You sue. Who wins? You win. Why? Why does F1 win? Yes. It's subsequent, right? So F1 is what we might call the subsequent finder. I'm sorry, the first finder. F1 was a first finder. F2 is a subsequent finder. Or subsequent, as I've learned some people say. I won't see that. That one's easy enough. Let's try a little bit one that's a little bit more complicated, right? Okay. So let's say F1 owns a watch. And he goes to the Apple store. He's already waiting now for the next 6 months to be the first line to buy it, and he loses it. Okay. Then F2 finds it. Okay. Now F3 steals it. F2's got a property exam coming up, so he wants to be ready. Okay. Okay. So here's the setup. I'm going to ask you a couple of different variations. So I own my watch, right? And then someone else finds it, and then someone else steals it. Okay. So let's try this. Ava? Ava. Okay. So let's try the first one, right? F2 sues F3. Between F2 and F3, who has a superior claim?
F2.
Exactly. Why? They were first in time, right? Everyone see that? Not too hard, right? Okay. F1 sues F3. Okay, and that's for James? James, so F1 sues F3. Who wins? How come? Yes. He has a superior claim, right? It's a better claim. Let's try this one. And this is not hard, right? I'm being very pedantic, so you all get this concept well. And then Andrew. Okay, so F1 sues F2. Who wins? How come? Yes. He was the first one to come before. Everyone see this is not that difficult. So we can say like F2 has title against the world except F1. In other words, F2 will beat everyone who finds it except for F1. Say F4 comes along, right, and then steals it from F3, and then F5, F6, F7, whatever, all the way. F2 will always have the superior claim except for F1 who has the original claim to it. Okay. Everyone see this? All right. So, Philip, why are we protecting people who steal stuff? Why shouldn't the rule simply be, all right? F2 sues F3. The court says, screw both of you. Let's find F1. Why shouldn't the court just say, you know what? You guys sue each other. You're both thieves. Let's go find F1. Give it to the court. Why don't we have that as the rule?
Well, it can be difficult to find that one in most cases.
Okay, good. That's the exact reason. The law likes to promote certainty, right? The law likes to have someone who's a lawful owner. If all we know about are F1 and F2, or F2 and F3 in court, it becomes very difficult to try to track down the original owner. So the law would actually prefer having a set of ownership where we know that F2 has it solid than having this precarious title where we're always trying to find the owner. Law says property usually has to be in one person at a time. Ravi?
What if there's a situation where it's not the
I'm sorry, say your question again?
What is a situation where it would be not critical to find the owner? Would this not apply, or would it just...
It's not the court's duty, right? So if this is an obvious fact where something's stolen and it's known to the public, then you would hope that the original owner comes in and protects his own property rights.
So, like, for example, I watched if his home address is saved in Washington, and the court knows that they could easily go back to that.
Yeah, so I mean, in that case, I mean, that'd be something the police would usually do to return a lost item. But say no one claims it, right? This only happens after efforts to identify the owner are unsuccessful. Here, it's we have this item, we don't know who it belongs to. We have A suing B. Who do we give it to, A or B? And all these questions are again, who gets it, A or B? We don't worry about the third person. We worry about the people in the actual litigation. Right? What about Stephen? Is it usually a bad thing to possess stolen property?
Yeah.
Why are here we actually encouraging someone to be able to legally keep stolen property? So it's a weird concept, right? Let's say instead of F2 finding it, F2 also stole it, right? Let's change the facts a little bit. They're both thieves. Why are we rewarding one thief over another because he acted first?
I don't think necessarily they're rewarding.
Okay.
It's just, like you were saying earlier, it's to produce that certainty.
Yes. So actually, it's a weird concept, but this actually promotes honesty, right? Where if you're an honest finder, you have two options. You can maybe throw something onto the black market, or you can come forward and claim it, right? The law would rather you claim it honestly than put it into the black market, because once in the black market, it's gone forever. At least here, if you're an honest claimant and you have it, and then the original owner shows up, the original owner might get it back. So it creates a safer environment. Yes, Jason?
Well, it's like in Peel, even though Hannah,
Like what?
In Hannah Peel,
Mhm.
Peel took it to, Hannah took it to the police, and that they later said that. You know, that.
So yes, exactly. We want to encourage people to take it to the police because maybe if they take it to the police and no one claims it, it'll be theirs, right? Imagine the rule is different. Imagine the rule is finders never get to keep it. Would anyone ever take it to the police? They'll just keep it for themselves and not tell anyone. So at least this encourages putting the article back into commerce, alerting the authorities, and there's some sort of record about it. Everyone see that? Is that a hand or a hair?
No hair.
Okay.
For another reason, could it be that if we had different rules for whether you stole it or whether you found it, then you would have to introduce evidence as to whether
It's difficult, right? And if there's no witnesses, it's, oh, I found it, right? I found it. Usually the only way to produce, I mean, you do this in criminal law, but the only way to have evidence for a theft is usually there's a complaining witness that says, I knew where it was, he took it, he broke in, whatever, right? So it's a difficult evidentiary issue to get there. Okay, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's say that there's a brooch on the ground, and then two people at the same time see it, and they're gonna like run to the
Right, yeah, and they dive on at the same time. Ask me this question. Okay, let's want to do Barry Bonds? Let's do Barry Bonds. So everyone knows, I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago. It's a case involving Barry Bonds was a baseball player. And I actually have a video. So here's the setup. Barry Bonds was a baseball player, and he was about to hit his 73rd home run. That would have broken a major league record, okay? No one ever hit that many home runs in a season before. That ball was estimated was going to be like worth $1 million, right? So the ball is the property of Major League Baseball, right? But the second Barry Bonds hits it and it soars into the crowd, well, watch what happens.
It's coming right at me. Oh, my God, it's like heading right for me.
Well, not 2 people, but 50 people jump on the ball. The ball's worth
Patrick
$1 million.
Hayashi of Santa Clara County comes
got
up
it.
with a jewel out in the right field bleachers. Patrick is going to be the Bay Area's newest million. My lungs. He's not the guy who caught the ball. I go up. I'm probably 6 inches.
Okay.
darn shit. Then we start to realize that this is actually a bigger story than just this historic home run ball.
There is a fight now brewing over the run ball.
At that point, Alex hired an attorney and he filed a lawsuit against Patrick Hayashi.
You guys got a better chance splitting the money than going to court.
I will be the rightful owner at the end of this trial.
You have no witnesses. You have no videotape. An umpire has to make a decision in less than a second. Now we have that decision stretched out over weeks and weeks and weeks in a courtroom.
I saw Mr. Hayashi fight.
You recall yelling out, ouch. Yes. Okay. I think it was ow. Sorry.
I actually did him.
I say it's finders, keepers, losers, weepers, man. Give the man back his damn ball. Let's move on.
That ball's up for grabs.
Okay.
The Giants are happy for you to keep any ball thrown or hit into the stands. However, this can be dangerous, so please be alert at all times.
Okay. So I wasn't going to get to it yet, but you asked, so I will oblige. Barry Bonds hits the home run, right? And I actually have a still, so you can see it, the exact moment the ball's caught. Okay. The ball comes flying into the outfield. There must be, you can count, 20, 30 people converging on this one spot because you can see the ball coming, so you can, you can get yourself ready for it. The ball hits the glove, and you can't quite tell, but it hits a glove of a guy named Mr. Popov, right? So it hits Popov's glove right here. It's unclear if he makes the catch cleanly. The ball is definitely in his glove, but it's unclear if it's secured in his glove because it might be in the leather, but it could be coming out. The video, was inconclusive, right? So he gets bum rushed, and you have all these people jumping over him and knocking him around. And here, I'll play this video in the background with the sound muted so you get a sense of how chaotic it was. Everyone's jumping on him, and it knocks him out of his hand, okay? So then somehow the ball begins to jostle and roll around, okay? And somehow Mr. Hayashi dives to the floor. We don't know how. And you can see it was a mess, right? This was an absolute mess. And he gets the ball, and he's on the picture. He's like this. He's holding the ball. He's like, hi. He's like, I got it. I got it. Okay, so that's the first proof that someone actually had the ball. Okay, so what happens? What happens here? All right. Samantha, what the hell do you do with this kind of case?
The judge?
Yeah, I mean, what would you do? What would you have done in this case? Well, I'm asking you. You're a property student.
Yeah.
You're in class. What would you have done? Ah, man, think about it. Do you give it to the guy who secured possession first? Do you give it to the guy who actually took it away clean?
Well, I don't really understand if the first guy who caught it, if he really caught it and somebody knocked it out.
We don't know. We don't know.
Because if that happened, I think he should get it, but...
Ah. Shelly, what do you think?
The first person that caught it, if he really did catch it.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, and I don't mean to be silly, but the judge in this case was flummoxed. He didn't know what to do. Right? So some people said, give it to the guy who first actually made possession with it. Other people said, no, give it to Hayashi. He actually got it. So what he actually did was, I'm serious, he actually appointed a board of law professors to come to the court, and they held a conference at the UC Davis Law School, UC Hastings Law School in California, to actually have a symposium where all these property professors, for once and less were relevant, got to go to court and actually argue. And I'm not joking. They came in, they discussed Pearson v. Post. They were discussing the Fox case. They were discussing the Whale case. They were discussing all these cases which had bored you with the first 3 weeks of the semester, right, to decide an actual property dispute of who gets the ball. Because if you think about it, it hit his glove, right? Let's say back in Pearson v. Post, right, Pearson was the hunter, right? Say he had grabbed the fox's tail and the fox, ran out. So he had his hand on the fox's tail, but the fox ran out, and then the jerk caught him. I don't know. What do you think, Amanda? How would the case have come out in that situation? Back to Pearson Post, week 1, right? Goes through the tail, it's like, whoops, slips through his hand, and the other guy catches it.
Well, I guess the jerk then, right?
Or would it? That right there. The ball slipped out of his hands, and here's even another angle. If all the people had, there were no iPhones back then. Imagine if there were iPhones. If you had well, but it's unclear if he actually had it though, because the ball is actually on the way out. But you don't see what happens after it goes down. So I think what happened was in his glove and it hit the floor. So if any of you are baseball fans, that's not a catch. If the guy has his glove and his glove's going like this and it hits the ground, that's not a secure catch, right? What about the whale case, right? Did they actually catch the whale, or did they just make a marking on it? Maybe if you, right there, that's the moment where it's caught by Mr. Hayashi. This is funny. It's a fun case, much more fun than foxes and whales. Some property books actually make this an actual case, but the reason why this case is not very good is what the court did at the end. So what does the court do at the very end? Carrie, do you read that?
Yeah, they split it between.
Okay.
So they made them sell it, I guess, at an auction, and they split it. But then,
Exactly. So basically, what happens is, right? They split the value of the ball. The judge is like, I don't know what to do. He says, Mr. Popov has a claim to it. Mr. Hayashi has a claim to it. The law doesn't control this situation. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the ball up for auction. We're going to sell it and split the proceeds 50-50. That's what Barry Bonds said, right? Okay. But I didn't mean to cut off Carrie, but the ironic or sad part of this case is they didn't get any money out of this. So originally the ball was estimated to sell for over $1.5 million. But in the intervening years, Barry Bonds got a lot less popular. He had allegations of steroids and other things, right? So he's actually under federal indictment. He might even go to jail for lying. So the ball only sold $450,000. Okay? Each of their legal fees were greater than that. They had spent more money on lawyers litigating this case than they actually made. In fact, one of the lawyers put a freeze on the assets to make sure his bills were paid before any money went to Mr. Popov. These guys got zero. They actually lost money on this. They lost money. First of all, the income tax hit. The second this glove hits Hayashi's hand, he's just earned, as far as the Uncle Sam's concerned, about $1 million, and they tax you on that. What's that? Plus, oh my God, plus California taxes, right? Plus 10%. Yes?
Did they tax the outright as well?
I don't know what the IRS did here. That's actually a good question. I can look into that. I'm not sure. But in theory, if when they pay their income tax at the end of the year, the IRS would have assessed the value as it was. This went on for like a 3-year litigation. This went on forever. So anyway, so the lesson is at the end of the lawyers always get paid. This is a lesson that you should all learn well. Always get paid, right? Because if you don't get paid, you don't eat. So yeah.
I'm sorry. So back to the ball. I can catch the ball.
Here.
So you're saying it's not a catch, but does the law of baseball apply to the audience?
That's what I was thinking.
I'm not being facetious, but there is no law to cover it. Right. On the very first day of class, I said we don't have law to govern it. California does not have a statute on what's a clean catch. Right? I'm sure if you open up the Major League Baseball handbook, right, I'm sure there's guidelines of when you make a catch.
So that's the whale case.
So you custom.
Yeah. So now we're custom, right? So
you go to custom.
If I spear the whale first, it's my chase, right?
Right. So I mean, I think we'd apply the rules of baseball. That's why you had all those people in court with the gloves. They were demonstrating how to do a catch.
Just a stovepipe.
I'm sorry?
Stovepipe.
Is that what you call it?
Out of the top, yeah.
So what happens, and maybe you know more about baseball, so it's in the glove, but as I understand it, it was coming down with the glove, and he didn't, I don't have a glove here, but if you don't have a good enough catch, it'll pop off the top. Is that probably what happened? Snow cone. Okay. Snow cone, baseball. Okay, very good.
That's the spear.
Yes, but that's where you throw the spear and it grazes off the whale's skin. Oh. It's not a catch unless it's actually See, you can't really tell, but if the ball was like a few inches lower inside the mitt of the glove, the netting, you would have had it clean. But because it's at the top, it popped right out. I mean, usually when you're an outfielder, you don't have people tackling you as you're trying to make a catch. That doesn't usually happen. Yeah, unless you have clean contact as you hit the ground or as your 2 feet are on the ground. Anyway, so baseball. Everyone get that? It's a good case, right? So some property books actually use that as the leading case to discuss finding, but it's good for a side. Okay, so let's talk about. All right, any questions on the Barry Bonds case?
They said that Bob had pre-possessory interest, but the unlawful conduct of Hayashi is what gave him that pre-possessory interest.
Right. So do we fault Hayashi for being a jerk and biting the kid? You heard that in the video. It's like, Mr. Hayashi bit you. It's like, yes. When stuff goes down, you start biting and kicking and screaming. I mean, to get $1 million, we don't know. And again, you watch the video I played it for you. It's largely inconclusive what happened. I mean, it's just there was a melee. Lots of people were fighting and biting and kicking each other. We don't know what happened. Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Survival of the fittest, the strongest prevails, right? All right, let's move on. Any other questions? All right, Emily, what's a bailment, Emily? Bailment. It's mentioned in the reading. Is like in a footnote or something? Yeah. We always read the footnotes. They're there for a reason.
Oh, rightful possession of goods by.
Don't read it. Tell me. Ah.
The person that's not the owner, but he's rightfully possesses that.
What do you mean? Give me an example of what a bailment might be. I don't mean to interrupt. That's a good comment. Using a softball glove, which is bigger, not a Major League Baseball regulation glove. That's a good point. All right, give me an example of what a bailment might be.
The example they give in the book is when you take when you check the code.
Good.
So.
Good. So okay, so I know you've all have checked cars because we're in Texas. You can't not do valet. It makes me very angry when I go to a restaurant in the parking lot and they make me do valet. It's like I can park it myself, but Texas. When you give your keys to the valet, he usually gives you a ticket back, right? And the ticket usually says something like, "We assume no liability for any destruction to your car." Okay. That's all modern stuff, right? That's all modern. At common law, when you gave your goods to someone else to hold, I guess there were no cars, but assuming you gave someone your carriage to maybe repair, or you gave someone your clothes to wash, or whatever, you were giving them a temporary possession of your goods. You're not giving it to them to keep. You're only giving it to them to hold on for some limited duration to do something with. Okay? That's what's called a bailment. Right? When you give someone something to hold on to. So like if I gave Nick my my car to park, I'm obviously not giving it to him to keep. Nick can't claim, "Oh wow, I found this car, it's mine now." I'm only giving for the limited purpose. Okay, so all the bailment does is a temporary ownership of a thing, and with that ownership comes a duty of care. So Nick can't go Ferris Bueller on me and start driving my car all around and bracking up miles on it. They have to have some sort of everyone knows what I mean? Ferris Bueller. Everyone seen the movie? If you haven't, go watch it. Yeah, there it is. Okay. All right, so what I want to say about that. Okay, so the case law as of so far is actually fairly clear. We did the Armory case, and it's basically the finder has the claim except against the true owner. Good. But then things get a little bit more messy when we do the appeal case. You're not in the chart. What's your name? Michael. Michael. Okay, I'll write your name in. Michael, what happened in the Hanafi appeal case, please?
So, guy owned a house, but he didn't occupy it, and troops during World War II came in and they occupied it for a year or two, and they paid him it was 250 pounds a year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
With occupation, and then some of those troops, or one of those troops, found a brooch.
Everyone knows a brooch is like a little piece of jewelry. It's like a little jewel, something, right? Okay.
And yeah, they found a brooch, and then the defendant, or the plaintiff eventually, or the defendant, the guy that found the brooch, brought it to the police and said, hey, the real owner's missing this, let them get it. No one ever came and got it, and then the plaintiff eventually won it, saying that it was his because it was in his property while they were occupying it.
Okay, good. All right, so the facts are like this. Mr. Peel owns a house, but he never actually lives there. He owns it. And there are a bunch of troops who were stationed there during the war. Okay? One of the guys, Hannah, was fixing the curtains, whatever, and then he sees on the top of the window there's like some sort of something, dust or whatever. He takes it down, and he finds that it's a jewel, it's a brooch. So he does the right thing. He could have just pocketed it, but because the law rewards finders, he says, okay, let me tell my boss about it. Let's give it to the police. Let me do the right thing, be a good Samaritan. And, you know, if the rightful owner shows up, then, you know, he can have it. If not, maybe I will. Now, we know that Peel, the owner of the house, it's not his brooch because he'd never actually been there. Yeah.
May I ask, though, but normally it seems like, say, a relative leaves you a property and all the contents within it, or even a property itself, no one else can go on and just chop your wood down. So why, if the brooch is within the property...
We'll get to that, but ownership of the property is one factor to consider. We'll get there in a couple minutes, okay? Okay, so they give it to the police. No one shows up to return to claim it. I think this is actually kind of funny. In the middle of World War II, between 1940 and 1942, in England, there were working brooch. Like, this is in the middle of the Blitz. London's getting bombed to smithereens, right? And they're going to court over this stupid little piece of jewelry. I don't get it, but I don't know. Anyway, so in 1943, we're at the height of freaking World War II, and you have these soldiers, at the urging of his wife, it seems, tries to sue Peel to get back the jewelry, which was 66 pounds, which is not an insignificant sum, but wasn't a huge amount of money. Okay, so we have the question, right? Who gets it? The person who is the first finder, or the person who owns the property? Okay. Now this is different from the case we just did. This isn't about subsequent finders. This isn't like Peel found it one day, then Hannah found it the next day. No. This is the soldier finds it, but the homeowner asserts a superior claim. Okay? So, is that Dylan? Yeah. Dylan, does the Armory case, the chimney sweep case, does that control this? Does that give us the rule for this case?
A different analysis.
Yeah, answer my question first, right? The analysis is a little bit jumbled, so let's walk through this a little bit delicately. Does the Armory case provide a rule to decide this decision? We know that Peel's not the true owner. We know he's not, because he'd never been to the house before. He can't possibly claim to be the true owner of the brooch. Okay, good. If we just apply Armory, straight up Armory, this is an easy case. Only one person found it, right? Hannah found it. It's his. But things get muddled. Jonathan, why do things get a little bit muddled after that?
I had a little trouble understanding.
Okay, it's a little confusing. Why? What was the problem? Why was it difficult to resolve?
The person trying to get the brooch from Peel owned the house?
Yes.
But it was wrecking or something?
Not too important, but yes, the guy owned it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, but is that why Peel was there?
Well, let me ask you, Jonathan, did the Armory case we just did it matter at all who owned the property where the thing was found? Was that even a factor?
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Okay, so here's the deal. The Armory case was simple, but these other precedents injected into the inquiry an additional factor. That factor is who owns the property where the thing was found. Everyone get that? And this is what you were getting at, and I told you it was 2 minutes away. Okay? These other cases injected into the inquiry who owns the property. Okay. So Calvin, they mentioned this case as Bridges versus Hawksworth case. What happened in the Bridges versus Hawksworth case?
It was a shop. The guy who owned the shop, there was a customer in the shop as well.
Uh-huh.
Someone dropped a package that had some money in it.
Mm-hmm.
Something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And it was a dispute over who owned it.
Okay, good. So, yeah, thank you, Calvin. So if the case was just based on Armory, right? Dude found the money. He's the only finder. It's his, right? But Arib, the court in Hawksworth, they did something different. What did they do there? How did they? What other factors did they consider in deciding it? Do you have it?
And they're saying that the shopkeeper didn't know who, like, it had been dropped. So, like, the guy didn't know he dropped it, and he figured it out 3 years later. Am I correct? Or no?
No. Lou?
I also don't have that.
No. Alex, who has it? Yeah, go for it.
Is it because the discovery about the communication of the discovery had that soldier that was there?
I'm talking about the Hawksworth case. Yeah, in the back.
Because the shotgun never possessed that. And,
Not
it
quite.
was found in open.
Okay, but who owned it?
We don't know who owned it.
Who owned the premise?
Oh, the shopkeeper.
Okay. So what the court did here, the trial court, is it seemed to suggest that one of the factors to consider, right, and the precedent was a little bit muddled and probably wrong. One of the factors to consider is who owns the property, right? More specifically, and this is what he was getting at, was this a place that's open to the public or not? So think about it this way, right? A couple years ago, I was at a burger joint in Washington, right? And I found $20 on the floor. Okay. I could have kept it, right? I mean, no one would have ever known, but I'm an idiot. So I go to the cashier and say, hey, someone dropped this $20 bill. Can you hold on to it, give it to the manager or whatever? Maybe if the rightful owner comes back and finds it, then, you know, the rightful owner will get it. I'm sure they pocketed the $20. I don't want to be too cynical, but I'm positive that the cashier probably needed it more than I did, whatever. Okay, fine. But my reasoning was actually fairly sound. If the intent is to actually return it to the original owner, who's in a better position to give it back to them? The restaurant. They're there all the time. I'm going to leave in a few minutes when I finish eating. It's funny. My grandpa always told the story when he was a young boy. He found like a $50 bill, and this was during like the 20s and during the Depression. This was a lot of money, and he insisted to bring it back to the police. And his dad's like, "You're crazy! No, the cops will just pocket it." So they brought it to the police, and the cops, whatever, who knows what they did with it. But we want to encourage the return of the item. So go back to Arib now. Arib, which party in that case is in the best position to return to the original owner? The shopkeeper. The shopkeeper, right? So the fact that this was a public shop, it wasn't like a private house. It was a public shop where lots of people walk through. Perhaps the best bet would have been to give it back. Okay? So that was the Bridges case. And don't worry too much about that precedent. But what you need to know about that case is they injected this other element into the case law regarding who owns the property. Okay? Yes?
I'm sorry. So if the customer, he gave, like, so you gave the $20 to the shop, right?
Yeah.
To the restaurant. And so let's say they didn't find the owner or whatever, and they were nice and they held the 20. So is that 20 yours or is it the shop's?
There's going to be several different answers to that question. We're going to do another case in 5 minutes, the McAvoy case, which comes out different. But let's build there, okay? But I want you to learn about the Hawksworth case, which is a great name, is that they're now considering this a public place who owns it. This is an additional factor to consider. Yes, but they still injected this element into the discussion, right? So in the end, the finder kept it, right? In the end of Hawksworth. But the dicta in that case, which is what's important for our purposes, is the ownership. Why is it important? Because in this case, the Mr. Peel owned the house. And does that factor into it? Right? Does the fact, and this is what I think is what Eric was getting at before, does the fact that Peel owns the house means he has a claim to the jewel because he never found it? Okay. Did I hand? Questions? That's hair again, right? Okay. Okay, so then we get to this other case. All right, I'll go back to Lou. Lou, this other case is love these British names. South Staffordshire Water Company versus Charmin. What happens in this case? Okay, Alex? It was a short case. There were these precedents discussed. What happened in that case? Don't read it. Tell me. Okay, don't do that where you just read from the book, because I can tell. All right, Maria?
Pool, right?
Yeah.
And like he found was it a jewel also?
Yes.
Okay. He found a jewel and that was whether the owner of the pool
Yes.
is to keep it or because I think he gave it to herself.
Okay, right. Okay, so what happened in that case was someone was cleaning out a pool, right? They were cleaning out a pool. And they found buried in the muck, right, in the dirt at the bottom of the pool, a ring. And I'm sorry?
2 rings.
Two rings, right? So you find jewelry buried inside this muck. And then this worker who's digging the pool finds it. And he brings it. And the boss claims, no, that's my ring, right? So Floor, in this case, who gets it? The person who finds it, or the person who owned the property?
I think that
Person who owned the property. Why does the person who owned the property get it? What was the holding there?
The object has appeared within ring.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly right. If something is physically attached to the land, right? In this case, the rings were actually buried in the muck. The rings were actually buried in the muck. The court, somewhat of a fiction, assumed that the ring was part of the land. Therefore, it belongs to the owner of the land. Even though the worker found it, he was the first to find it, because it belonged in the land, it was his. Everyone see that?
Does it bear any relevance whether they're his agent or just simply because they're...
It doesn't matter who does it.
Okay.
There was actually a case a couple in the news. Some of you may have seen this. It was actually kind of crazy that a woman graduated from a university in Washington State, and she had her class ring, and she lost it. Somehow, that class ring wound up in a lake somewhere in San Angelo, Texas, 60 years ago. And when the lake dried up, they found this woman's ring with her numbers on it buried in the lake. Thankfully, they did the right thing, and they actually tracked down the woman, and they gave it back to her. But, these are crazy cases from England that happened. How a ring got from Washington State to San Angelo, Texas, we don't know. We'll probably never know that. But I think, how old was she? Like 84 years old? She got her ring back. Remarkable, right? What's that?
The university is like right by.
The university was in Washington State.
No, it says who now lives in.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, I mean, oh, you're right. I misread that. Yeah. But still, okay, less impressive. I read too quickly. But still pretty cool that they actually tracked her down and found the ring. People, I don't know, skinny dipping on graduation, I don't know, whatever happened, right? What happened? Okay. All right, so everyone see that. All right, the last case mentioned, Matthew, was this Ills versus Brig Gas. What happened there?
I have no idea.
This was a really short case. Why did none of you read it? I'm not sure. Yeah, but like 5 in a row. All right. Jordan, what happened in that case?
It was a gas company thing, kind of. I read this like years ago. I really don't remember.
This was like one of the shorter cases, like 5 pages.
But
Rachel?
A gas company, I guess, had leased some land, and then they found like this really old, I think it was like a boat that was buried in the land. And so they, I guess, obviously take claim to it because they found it. But then the people who were the actual owners, the lessors, also staked the claim.
Okay.
And I think the court kind of said it depended on, and I remember them talking about whether if it was a mineral or a part of the land, then it would still belong to the lessors. So if it was a chattel, then it could belong to the lessees because they found it first.
Basically, yeah. To make it really simple, who owned it? The person who found it, the person who dug the land, who owned the land.
Well, I thought it depended on how they determined what it was. If I did that wrong, whether if they determined it was a chattel that was part of the.
If it was a chattel part of the land.
If it was a mineral that was part of the land or a chattel.
You make it too. You're on our check.
I thought it was too different. Like it depended on that.
What the court actually held, right, was that this was actually literally attached to the land. Right? This was like the rings buried in the bottom of the muck. So because this thing was literally attached, it would go to the owner of the land. That's enough for now. Literally in the land. Like, you know, in Zoom, in the computer? Right. It was literally in the land. At least one person got that. It's in the computer. Google that if you don't know what I'm talking about. All right. Well, I would have given him all the mulch with the ring in it back. Oh, if you like it, you've got to put a ring on it. Okay, so we have these precedents, right? We have this case about finding banknotes on the floor, right? Whether it's public or private. We have these cases about whether the ring was actually attached to the land or in the land. So how did they resolve this case, Eric? At the very end of the day, how did they wrap this up?
I want to say that because it had been abandoned and long a part of the property, then the rightful owner of the property had rights to the boat itself.
Is that what the court said?
Maybe not those exact words.
That's not what the court said at all.
Okay.
No. No. Carson, what did the court say?
Plaintiff had possession of it because, let's see. So the plaintiff was because it was the actual piece of chattel. It didn't matter that it was buried in the land.
We're talking about the Brooch case.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, were you answering me? No.
For which case?
No, I'm sorry, Eric. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. The Brooch case, when we're talking about, the actual case.
Oh, the Brooch?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what did the court do in the Brooch case? I'm sorry if I
yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the civil.
Then that's my mistake.
It went to the finder.
It went to the finder. Why?
Because the owner of the property never took possession, never had knowledge.
Okay, good. The court basically, yeah, and the court at the end gets a little bit muddled, right? Why does it get muddled? They basically, listen, we have all these precedents that go all over the place, right? We have some cases that say, you know, the finder-keeper, right, the Armory case. We have some cases that say, well, it depends if it's in a public place or a private place or if it's owned. We have other cases that say, well, if it's physically attached to the land, then it belongs to the owner, right? Here we're talking about a brooch that was sitting on top of a windowsill in a house owned by someone who never actually went there. This case doesn't fit into the precedents clearly. So what do they say? Basically, the finder gets it. In the ordinary meaning of things, someone lost it, and then the soldier found it. That's it. Right? That's it. Finders keepers. It didn't matter so much who owned it. It's who found it first. Okay, I want to see that. You can tell they're really grappling with the precedents because they kind of go every which way. In the next case, we'll show this again. Yes, ma'am. So if you notice, they say something like this is something for a higher court to resolve or something like that. They were hoping that maybe someone would fix this. Maybe like a different court would be able to resolve this issue. Because the court was taking note of the fact all these different precedents went all over the place. And that was a bad thing. They're hoping maybe someday with the right case, they can clean up the law and maybe make the precedents a little bit neater. That didn't happen, though. as we'll see in the next case, which was from the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, so we jump across the pond and we come to from the Old England to New England. That was good. And we resolve this case with McAvoy. So, Nick, what happened in the McAvoy case?
In a barber shop, some guy, one of the person who was getting shaved, found on a table a wallet, and he showed it to the barber and asked him. The barber said, "Where'd you find it?" And he put it on the table. He said, "I found it right there."
Okay.
And the guy getting his shave said to the barber, "You keep it and try and see if the owner comes by." And then a couple times, the guy getting the shave asked the barber, "Can I have that money back?" Actually, and the barber said no.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the situation, kind of like the Bridges versus Hawksworth case, right? Some money is found on the floor of a shop. I'm sorry, no, it's on the floor. They found money on a table lying inside the shop. The customer finds it, says, "Hey, shopkeep, hold on to it. You know, advertise it. Maybe the original owner will show up." Maybe someone. Okay, so no one claims it. Comes back some time later, give me the money. It had been spent. I'm sure it had been spent, right? All right. So, Marcel, what does the court do here?
They look at the intent versus law, like versus somebody just dropping something on the floor. That's where he took it out to use it and left it on the counter.
So what's the difference? So explain the two standards.
Like if I drop something, I don't really know where I lost it. I kind of have to go back and trace my steps. Where if I took something out to use it and then forgot to pick it back up.
Okay. Yeah. So what the court does here, and that's pretty good, is it distinguishes between something that's been lost or mislaid, right? And I can use an example. So I'm sure this has happened to everyone in this room, where you go to pay for something with your credit card, you know, they swipe it, you put it down, and you walk away. That's happened to me several times, and then you have to run back, like, oh, I forgot my card there, and you get it, right? So usually in that case, your credit card will be on the table or on the counter or whatever. Okay. It's probably also happened to you that you had some coins in your pocket, and you sat down, and they fell out of your pocket. And you didn't even realize it, right? They just fell out, you didn't hear, it was a noisy room. Okay. That's the difference between having lost property and mislaid property. So what the court effectively says here is, right, for lost property, it's finders keepers, right? If I find some property that's lost on the floor, right, you know, it's in the bathroom floor, it's somewhere where a person didn't mean to put it there, then it's finders keepers, right? But what if it's mislaid, right? Someone left a credit card on the counter next to the cash register. Or someone, you know, they signed their credit card and their check and they left it on their table after they left. Okay, in that case, it's the owner of the property. Right? It's the difference between having something forgotten and having something that's lost. When it's mislaid, you just forgot about it. And when you forget about it, the person in the best position to return it to you will be the shop owner, right? But if you lost it, it fell out of your pocket, you probably have no idea where it is. You won't be able to retrace your footsteps. So in that case, we just go with finders keepers, go through the default rule. Right? If I remember I paid for my dinner with my credit card and then I don't know where my credit card is, I'll know to go back to that restaurant and say, oh, it's probably by the counter or by my table. If money falls out of my pocket while I'm walking down the street, tough luck. So here the law is looking to reward the finders when something's lost. But when it's mislaid, and this is the key, in some sort of public place like a shop or something, you let the owner hold on to it.
The brooch wasn't mislaid. It was like up in the
Ah. Okay, let me ask this question, Marcel. How do you think that brooch got up there? Who do you think put it there?
some person.
What were they trying to do, probably? Hide it, right? Brooches don't defy gravity, right? They don't just flutter up, right? Someone was trying to hide it. So I don't think it was lost. It was probably forgotten about, which would be mislaid, which would probably suggest it goes to the owner of the house. You say thank you? Yeah. So under the standard in the McAvoy case, the other case would come out differently. The owner of the house would keep it because mislaid, which we can also call forgotten, right? The property is forgotten, but the owner of the house hold on to it. Maybe the original owner. Again, if you have a brooch, which is, I mean, when you don't lose stuff falling up, right? if you lost the brooch, it would be on the ground somewhere. You deliberately put it up there, trying to hide it or protect it, or maybe you want to keep it. Who knows, right? Questions. So we'll preempt the question. How do we know which is the correct rule to apply, right? There is no good rule, right? There is not a single black letter rule here. And to preempt the next question, Professor, what do we do in the exam, right? Okay, so it will be helpful on an exam for you to talk about all the different factors to consider. Okay, and I'll say this many times, I don't really care what answer you come up with as long as it applies the things we've talked about. So if you say, well, you know, this person found it first, but this person owned the property, and it was probably, you know, mislaid, lost, so I'll go with the McAvoy case, and I'll say that the owner of the property gets to keep it. Right, that's a perfectly fine answer. Right? This is one of those areas where you do not have a clear statement of law. Okay. Actual questions, not my fictional questions. Let's see. Yes, sir.
What is Texas? Are they?
It's a mess. It's a mess everywhere. They'll probably use some variation of this lost, forgotten distinction, but again, these cases are not in a clear line. Sorry.
Does mislaid and lost have a first in time? So I forget it, and then somebody's cleaning, and it gets lost, and then it's gone.
Well, keep in mind who are your various people, right? We F1, F2, and F3. If the first person comes by, he always has a superior claim. But we're talking between F2 and F3, right? You have the person who found it first and the person who found it second. So usually the first in time. Let me clarify. This is not between subsequent finders. This regime is between the finder and the person property, right? When you have subsequent finders, this is the first case we did. It's a different standard.
So we have the wallet. It's misplaced on the counter, and that's definitely misplaced. If cleaning crew cleans it and I find it under a chair.
You're still a subsequent finder. That doesn't matter. You're still a subsequent finder. This is only when the dispute is between the finder and the owner of the property.
But the dispute could be mislaid or lost.
Would it matter? This is like when Nick's. This is the beginning. Nick found my cup and then Carson stole it.
It's a matter of me getting it or the shop.
Are you the original owner?
No.
Then it wouldn't matter. This is the same question. I have my cup here. Nick finds it mislaid and he takes it, and then Carson steals it, right? Or Carson finds it lost. With subsequent finders, it's first in time. That doesn't matter. That's the F1, F2, F3. This only matters if the case is finder versus owner.
This wasn't the owner. This was somebody that found the wallet for the money.
But it was the owner. It was a barbershop owner. It was basically.
But he's saying, does the owner of the place that found the item get to keep it?
Yes. Yes.
So no, even if it's like under a chair.
Well, now we're talking about agency, but if you talk about the barbershop person who works there, the person who owns it, right? This only matters when it's the owner of the property or the manager of the property, whoever happens to be.
Because you're saying that he's more likely to return it.
Yes.
That's why he gets.
Yes.
Especially if you find something in public, like at a
Yes.
store.
Someone owns it. Someone owns the property. Then the owner gets it. This rule only applies when it's owner versus finder. If you find it on a public street, this rule does all. If it's on a public street, this entire mislaid versus lost distinction doesn't matter. This only matters when you're in some sort of a private place.
So is it anywhere it's found in
A private place. Yeah. Right, that's why the Hawks case was important, because it introduced this distinction of whether it's in public or a private place, right? If it's in a public place, it's first come, first serve. If it's in a private place and there's a claim with the owner, this actually matters.
I guess what would be the distinction between business where it's private and open to the public?
If you have private property, it's private.
So if I'm saying the library, it's mine.
A library would probably, now we're getting really into the weeds, but it would be the manager of the library would probably keep it.
Oh.
I'm talking about like on a street, like on a public street that no one owns. A library is quasi-public. It's deeper than you need to know. Deeper than you need to know. Any other questions? Yeah?
We need to know where abandonment fits in there.
Not really. Don't worry about abandonment.
What about treasure trove?
Don't worry about it. You go pirates later. Anything else? All right. Have a good day. I'll see you later.